Hey, it's Dr. Thornell with New England Family Chiropractic. I want to talk to you today about masks. And whether we're talking about the hospital mask, we're talking about the cloth masks that you see everybody wearing, whether we're talking about one or two, and we're doubling up or we're tripling. The discussion I want to have today is not necessarily about whether masks work or not. We're not going to talk about one or two. In fact, Dr. Fauci last week, the big deal was two, maybe three. And then just yesterday, I read him where he said there's no evidence to support that. So I'm not going to get into any of that. What I want to ask is this, is if the mask does, we're going to just assume that they're telling us the facts straight up. The mask does its job. You're wearing your mask every day. You go into the stores and everything else. Your mask is doing its job. If it is, then what's happening is the viral particles are being trapped inside the mask. That's the purpose. If we look up today, what is the purpose of wearing a mask? It's so that the viral particles, largely coming out, being exhaled, are trapped in the mask, but also coming in, they're not reaching you because they're trapped in the mask. So here's my question. We've now trapped all of these viral particles in our mask or two. Then what? Seriously, then what? You've got that mask, you've got this viral catching device that's now filled with viral particles. If it's the cloth mask, typically you've worn it days upon days, maybe weeks. You wore the same mask since last March, and you've got all these viral particles trapped in your mask. Then what? What are we doing with this mask? What are we doing with all of this virus that's trapped in your fibers of your cloth mask or in your paper mask? Keep in mind that this viral catching device, every time you put it on and off, you're touching it. You're touching the inside, you're touching the outside. Every time you go into a public restroom, you're gathering viruses and bacteria on your mask. Each time we put it on and off, it's touching the rest of your face. So every time you take your mask off, are you sanitizing your face? Every time you touch your mask, every time I simply adjust it down because it's riding up into my eyes, or I adjust it down because it's ridden up on my chin, every time I do that, am I instantly going and washing my hands and sanitizing my hands right away? Sure, you're washing your hands more often now than you did in the past, but are you doing it every time you touch your mask? The honest answer is no. Are you taking your cloth mask every couple hours and sanitizing it, washing it, switching it out every couple hours, or every couple minutes? You're capturing viruses inside that mask. When you take off your mask and you dispose of it, you get home at the end of the day and you put it on the counter, or even before that, you get in your car. You put it on the dashboard of your car. You put it in the drink holder in your car. You put it in the seat next to you. Now are you going and sanitizing your car because your viral catcher has been placed in your car? Now you get home, you put it on your counter, you put it in your pocket when you go, into your house or out of your car, into your car when you're leaving a store, you put it in your pocket. Now your hand goes in your pocket after you've taken the mask out. We're moving viruses around all the time. Are you constantly sanitizing your pockets? Are you constantly sanitizing your countertop or wherever you put it at home? The honest answer is no, you're not. So what my real lesson becomes, and I also forgot, when we're done with the viral catcher, are you putting it in a biohazard bag? Because goodness knows if you've filled this thing with viruses over days, weeks, months in many cases, it belongs in a biohazard bag if it's full of bacteria and viruses. So here's what I'm really trying to get at, is the fact that if we're filling these masks with virus day in and day out, our own and other people's, we're constantly inhaling it. Is the mask, regardless of what the science says and the news says, is the mask really the thing that's protecting you? And the answer is no. And it doesn't mean that the mask doesn't do some protecting. It likely does. But what's protecting you? It's you've gathered all of these bacteria and viruses and you've attached them to your face, to your hands, to your clothes, to your pockets, to your car, to your countertops. You've maybe loaned your mask to a spouse or a child as you go in a store because they didn't have one. You are constantly spreading bacteria and viruses all over the place with the use of masks improperly. So if that were the case, and it was purely up to your exposure to virus that made you sick, then not only would you be sick constantly, also everybody you came in contact with, anybody that sat in your car, anybody that your hands touched, that you kiss with your spouse or your kids or anything else, you'd be spreading viruses at a massive rate, which in fact you do. That's the way viruses live in our world. The mere fact that we've identified a virus that we don't want to come into contact with doesn't mean that we don't come into contact with it. Mask or not, we live in a world that's full of bacteria and viruses, little germs, if you will. These little microscopic germs are everywhere. In fact, you have more viruses on you and inside of you. You have more viral cells inside of you than you have human cells, and that's a fact. If we break you down percentage-wise, you are more virus than you are human being. For a lot of you, that's a scary thought. If you're a germaphobe, you're like, oh my gosh, how do I come in contact with, I've got 380 trillion different viruses within my body right now. Oh, it's so scary. It's not scary. That's being a human being. That's the way human beings have adapted to our environment over eons. That's what we do. So the more viruses that we come into contact with and learn to deal with, the healthier the body is. The more viruses a body can adapt to, the healthier that body is. And that's the real lesson that I want to give in talking about the masks and going through this is we are expected as human beings to live in conjunction with viruses. We're never going to get rid of them all. And that includes the coronavirus. So your job is always to make yourself the most adaptable human being you can be. And by adaptable, I mean your ability to adapt to changes in your environment that include heat and cold and bacteria and viruses and everything else around you. What health is, the healthy body uses your senses to gather information from your environment, passes that information through your nervous system to your brain. Your brain says, oh, I know what this body needs at this minute. And then it sends information through the nervous system to the rest of your body to make changes to adapt you to your environment. And if that's an immune system change that needs to happen, then the healthy body will make that change and adapt to those viruses and will live in conjunction with those viruses without any problem. Which is why even with the coronavirus, most cases are asymptomatic because healthy people are making that adaptation. Who's having problems with coronavirus and COVID disease? It's people who are not healthy. We know that the average person who's struggling with COVID has 2.9 comorbidities or other serious disease, and their body doesn't adapt well. Their body isn't functioning well. That's why they have those comorbidities in the first place. So just again, a lesson about living a healthy lifestyle, the fact that most of your health is up to you. Certainly there's times when you have been around sick people and not gotten sick, and then there's times when you've been around sick people and you get sick. What's the difference? Is it them? Is it the bacteria and the viruses? No, it's you, and it's your ability to make that adaptation. So keeping yourself strong by doing all the things that we talk about in here all the time, eating right, exercising, staying well adjusted so that that communication pathway can allow your body to adapt. And while you're at it, you should be doing that with your